Hi everyone and welcome back. So last time we cloned these projects from my GitHub and we'll continue from there. So the plan for today is like to explain what's in here. We'll talk about editors, about like Docker Compose, and we're gonna run like our first container. And in the end, we'll see what we can do from there. So let's get going. Like I told you, so last time we cloned these projects inside home directory, so we'll have in here. So let's open it in editor and see what's inside. I use PHP Storm as editor, but you can like use any editor you want. Although I recommend PHP Storms or VS Code. All other I didn't like enjoy that much, but it's up to you. So the folder I have already it opened, but let me show the path for that. So will be VSL Debian in my case, home, John, my user, and then projects. So you open that in here. What's like inside? So I'm not sure this like can be see. It's like big enough, but with the files we're gonna resolve that. So we have like a folder, a PHP node where there are three files, an env example file and the Docker Compose YAML file. This is like the most important one. So I'm gonna start with that. So let me make it bigger. So we have the version of the Docker file. So Docker Compose, you can like run Docker containers through multiple stuff. One of of them is like Docker Compose. Some other command it's like Docker Run. I personally prefer a lot more Docker Compose because you can control a lot more things you do than Docker Run. So at any point, right, in my videos, if you don't see me talk about Docker Run, is because I don't like it that much. I prefer to create a Docker Compose YAML file and the Docker file attached to it and run my own things. But we'll get there. So this is the version, the 3.9. My I think is the latest Docker Compose version available, but who knows? We have like services, and inside in the services section we define our services. In my case I have only one service and I put it as PHP node. Then for that service we have like a container name, and what's like between dollar and brackets, it's like variables that are coming from env file. So I'm gonna copy this env example file into an env file and we'll see what's like in there. And let me make it bigger. So we have like this user and group, which I'm gonna talk about them in a second, and container name. In my case, it's the same as service. So PHP dash node. The restart unless stopped is for a container to restart automatically whenever like Docker start. So that will happen. Then the user that we are passing to be like the default authenticated user when we exec that container. We'll see in a second what Docker exec does. For the build, we can either use an image or a Docker file. Um, it's recommended both action. Docker file if you want to do more than what's in the image, but in some cases the image is just fine. For example, in MySQL, right, we don't want to like alter the image, we just want an extra conf in there that can be easily put as a volume. We'll see below. In this case I want to like alter the image and write my own Docker file. So I pass this, and to that Docker file, I pass the user and group ID as well in there. And I'm going to show in a second why. And then getting to volumes, about which I told you earlier. In the left side, it's what's on the host, and on the right side, it's what's on container. They are separated but by this. So I have like everything that's inside this folder should be mapped to var vvv inside container. And then the php ini from php node folder should be mapped to the php ini from php confd inside container. And the supervisor configuration should be mapped to supervisor configuration as well in there. And the last bit is that I want to share like temporary folder because of permissions. So this it was like a setting that I discovered. Sometimes temporary files that does not work as expected with PHP VPM container. So for that, that is the last bit. Okay, going to env. What should have in here, inside like Debian, Ubuntu, right? Each Linux user have an identifier, right? An ID and a group ID. We want those two because we want to pass them through container, and I'm gonna show you in a second in the Docker file why. So I'm gonna do id-o, find the user ID, and id-g, find the user group ID. In my case, 1000, 1000. So I have them in here. That's all good. 1000, 1000. Now let's go to this Docker file and see what's in there. In PHP Storm, you can do control click and we'll go directly to that file, but it's like in here, double click is the same thing. So let's go like step by step in here. This is the image that I'm starting from. It's PHP 8.0. So why I didn't go to PHP 8.1 or I don't know 7. This can be altered and container rebuilt every time you might need some other things. But in my case, I want to like have this one. Even for you'll see in like next lessons. For some others, I'll use PHP 8.1. Maybe I'll even go to 2 since that it's out this month. But yeah, we'll get there. We have this command to share to set the shell to bin bash. I like that. Then um, the user command, it's to define the user that you are running next commands. After that, you'll see like in the end we set back the user to the one that I want to have container at. So I told you that we send these args that should be like the same as host, in my case like Debian. So we do that because what I do and what I did here, it's like remove the VV data user and group and re-add them to be the same ID and group ID as the host user. Why I do that? Well, like this, I avoid setting additional permissions and to have like when I clone something to like change the ownership, or maybe when npm or composer add the vendor folder to change the ownership, and so on, right? So I set everything to the vv data and vv data group to be on the same ID as the user of the host, and by doing so, the permissions will be identical as the host inside that folder. Then setting the home folder of VV data, and then some supervisor settings. If you want like to talk more about supervisor and what supervisor is, I can do a separate video. Just um, leave that in comments. Then install some necessary packages, libraries, default editor inside that that container. installing Composer in container, some extensions and configure them, install latest long-term support Node version and npm, then run supervisor through Python. Then, like I said, change the user back to VV data and running supervisor as VV data user, and work there. The work there that I set in here as everything to be like when you exec the container will go directly to this folder inside the container. And in these configurations that I have attached as volumes, I don't have like in the PHP nothing now, but we can add, for example, I don't know, if we want a memory limit, right? We can do memory limit equals, I don't know, 1 gigs, or yeah, no idea. Um, uh, it was, yeah, like this, 1 gig, my bad. But yeah, any setting, additional settings, it's like not um, a big deal. And about supervisor, like I said, we're gonna talk in a separate video if you need it. The main thing that you should remember now is that I keep PHP FPM alive through supervisor. And that's like all about Docker Compose and this. So let's start like this container, right? In order to do so, there is a command that it's like this: Docker Compose app and dash d um, inside that folder. So I'm not sure if you remember from last time we did some additional settings in here, right? Where we set this Debian as default profile. Well, I told you that I'll show you in a future videos why I did that. So PHP Storm has terminal built-in. If I hit terminal in here, we'll open the default profile and right to this folder that it's opened. So I can like run command from here, from in here directly. So not have to like navigate to that bit. But okay, let's start the container. So the command it's like docker compose app-d, and what that will do, we'll go like through each I already have that and it's cache, but for you it might take some time, like a couple of minutes. So we'll go through each steps that are defined in Dockerfile. So I guess I have like 25 steps defined in Dockerfile. So each line it's like one step, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on until we'll reach the end, and we'll do that one by one. So it installed and started this container. So now that it started, if we do like docker ps, we can see we have one running container. If you want to see like more details about this container, for example, logs or maybe inspect, see network stuff and some other things, you can do to here, like let's say docker log or docker inspect and container name. Um, but it's very hard to read all of that, and because of that we're gonna start docker. And last time I showed you like to install Portainer extensions from docker extensions. So having like I'm gonna go to Portainer from here, from extensions. Okay, let me make this like this. Okay, so we have this Portainer. If we go to it, now we have one running container. So that it's like the PHP node I just created. In here, there are some quick actions, like the first one is logs, the second one is inspect. You can access those by clicking into container and will be those links in here. If I hit logs, will show me the logs of that container, and we'll see that PHP was started by supervisor and it's up and running. And like this, we have like everything up and running. The last bit is what can we do from here? Well, we can execute the container. Let's see. To execute the container, there is docker exec command. then dash interactive and TTI display. So for that it's int, and then container name, in my case PHP node, and then the shell I want to use bash as shell, sorry. So running like that, now I'm inside container and I'm as vvv data. If I do id dash u and id dash d dash g, I see there is 1000 1000. Well, now if I create any file from here, like touch, I don't know, test, um, okay, and I have this test txt that its owner vvv data, right? But if I exit the container and I show that the test txt it's owned by John outside of container, and like I said you last time, John has um, like Windows user has full permission inside home directory, uh, and John basically it's shared as Windows user, so everything it's like full permission in here. If I have to, like, if I want to edit this from PHP Storm from Windows, I can write it in it and will be saved and no permission will be broken. Because of that, it's all the settings I did before. Let me delete that. Okay, so going back to container, right? Execting container. So I'm in container. What I can do now? Well, I have composer, right? I have npm. So I have all of that. So if I want to, let's say, create a Laravel project, right? I go to Laravel, right? And then installing, yeah, and I want to install through Composer. So I have Composer create project and then a name of the project. I don't know, test. I'm gonna delete that. So that will download and install. Probably it started already to appear. So we'll like have this. And from here, I can open and create a new Docker Compose and Docker for that project, and start a project, a Laravel project. Or if I want to create an create React app, for example, we can do npx create React app, and then I don't know, test2, and we create a React app and start from there. So these are like the next steps. We're gonna do create a Laravel application and do all the Docker Compose settings for it like next time. Maybe not really sure if we have like time to do all of them, but probably the most. So in the end, I want like to thank you for supporting me, uh, and subscribing to my channel and sharing. And yeah, let's do this together. Bye.